But the question I want to ask you, which gets to I think the core that you mentioned also, is the clash of values, right? Which obviously Sam Huntington and many others have written about, right? And you've referred to them as well in your book. Having lived this life that has spanned the West and the East, Singapore, but the US also. Of course, your family is spread out around the world as a Sindhi family, as you talk about. Tell me, where do you land now in this idea and this debate around Western and Eastern values? Do you see it as a clash? Do you see that twain can meet, or do you feel like where have you landed now after a long career and life that has spanned these spaces? Where have you landed now on the question of values of the West and the East?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for having me on your show. I've enjoyed many of your recent interviews with Ruchi Sharma and with Arvind Banagria. And you begin with a very good question because in some ways it captures the arc of the journey of my life,
Yeah,
Because I started off as a child, as I say very candidly in my memoirs. I grew up in a British colony, in a very poor British colony then. And the way the British colonized countries around the world, certainly the way they colonized Asia, was to ensure that they made you believe that we Asians, we were inferior.
inferior, of course.
I had a completely colonized mind as a child
Yeah,
living in a British colony, and I thought that the white man would always be superior to the brown or yellow people that I lived with in Singapore. And so it's quite remarkable to go from a childhood where I felt inferior to the West. And then, like you, after having been educated in the West, and I must emphasize here that I'm an admirer of the West. I'm not
yeah,
anti-Western in any way. I do think that the success of Western civilization was a great gift to humanity, because if the West hadn't modernized and transformed itself first, we wouldn't be where we are today. Many of the great benefits that you and I have had from a modern education, Western education, is a gift from the West too. But what is amazing is that having grown up as a great admirer of the West, I have now come to a very strange corner in my life where now I begin to realize that the West has lost it in a very significant way. And the West doesn't even understand that they make up only 12% of the world's population, and 88% of the world's population lives outside the West. And what is shocking is that even though the West has these great universities that you and I have spent time on, I spent a year in Harvard as a visiting fellow. Just in early 2024, I was also in UPenn, where you've been
yeah,
as a visiting fellow. And it's amazing that even though the United States and certainly Europe too has these great universities, these great universities have failed to educate their population on the fact that we are now moving to a completely new world order. We are moving from a world where you had one dominant civilization, a mono-civilizational world with the West dominating it, as I experienced in my childhood, to a multi-civilizational world, where you now got to understand the history and
yeah,
background of all the other great civilizations on planet Earth. And it's shocking to see the amount of ignorance there is in the West about this new world that is emerging. And many in the West still, in one way or another, keep clinging on to this great illusion that Francis Fukuyama created with his essay, The End of
yeah,
History, which said that, hey, we won the Cold War. The West doesn't have to adjust or to adapt to the world.
yeah,
It's the rest of the world that has got to become westernized. And what was absurd about this thesis is that Francis Fukuyama did a lot of brain damage to the West because he put the West to sleep at precisely the time when Asia was waking up.
Yeah, sense of complacency. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing that, the West could fail to see that this was the moment of greatest historical change ever in human history, when suddenly so many civilizations that had been sleeping start to wake up.
Yeah.
And the West is not aware that they are waking up. So the level of ignorance, even in leading Western institutions for me, is quite shocking. And that's what puzzles me the most.